Hello, my name is David, and today we'll be going through my creative design process bringing the character of the Mayor from my Autodale Animated series to life. Please enjoy. The Great Inventor, also known as the Mayor of Autodale, is the founder of the town. He has been locked away in the heart of the city for thousands of years, twisting and mutating into something almost totally inhuman. He was human once, a machine-obsessed inventor born during a time of great sickness, a time when everything was dying. Desperate to save what little he could during this great withering, he captured a wilting goddess and through a series of unspeakable atrocities managed to keep her alive. He is tethered to this life-giving goddess. She is his new obsession. Autodale exists to keep her alive in this never-ending cycle. Even though the citizens of Autodale have long forgotten about the great inventor that saved them all, oh so long ago, they continue to happily echo his machine-idealizing beliefs, living and working and dying as cogs in his everlasting, immortal machine. What I just read to you was all that I had ever written about this character before starting this film, which would have been written sometime in 2018, I think. I spent the first couple weeks on this project just exploring what kind of character the Mayor should be. I wanted the Mayor to be a mix of monstrous and sympathetic, tyrannical and stoic, with an almost seductive quality and nobility. He thinks of himself as a regal and dignified thing, but that's hard to see, buried under the withering and rotting but undying mix of flesh and metal that he has become. He is torn, split in the middle, partially convinced that his immortal machine, his creation, is a kindness to all of those who live in his utopian dystopia. But simultaneously he is totally riddled with regret and doubts for the atrocities he has committed to get here. This is the character outline that I wrote and was ready to move forward with. The Mayor is an ancient, decaying but undying thing, but in his half-eaten away and bone-revealing outline is an abhorrent travesty of the human shape. I had two big inspirations while designing this character, the H.P. Lovecraft story The Outsider and the Tortured Souls toy line by Clive Barker and McFarlane Toys. I feel the Tortured Souls toy line kinda speaks for itself. Lots of great and gory anatomical details, 12 totally unique and creative, disturbing pieces. These models served as great artistic inspiration for the character design of the Mayor. The Outsider, on the other hand, more so served thematic inspiration. The Outsider is one of H.P. Lovecraft's best stories. It is told from the perspective of a man who has spent his entire life locked away in a labyrinthine dungeon castle, who has seemingly never made contact with another individual. He is completely unaware of the monster he is twisting into, rotting away on his own. Thematically, the story has more in common with my Don't Feed the Freaks short film over Immortal Machine, but it was that idea that really resonated with me working on this project. My earliest drawings of the Mayor were heavily inspired by the protagonist in that story. I feel I nailed the design of the mayor's body and silhouette quite quickly. A tall, naked, digitigrade, twisted humanoid shape, almost xenomorph-like, with a torso that is hollow, spilling out all of its organs. It was the face that I seemed to really struggle with. Unsatisfied with any of the faces I was coming up with, I actually went back to the first drawing I ever did of the character. This 5-second, 10-second doodle I don't even remember drawing. But given the surrounding text, I must have doodled it before Model Citizen was even conceived. This drawing is around 1.5 years old, I think, back when this short film was a very different idea just rattling around in the back of my head. It's really not much, but these couple lines with the droopy, fleshy, jowly mustache is what finally gave me the idea for this. This design seemed to tick every single box I had for the character. Faceless, ancient, sympathetic, horrifying, awkward and disgusting, and if posed correctly, could look dignified and noble. Satisfied with the look, I drew one final drawing of the character, sketched in a personality-appropriate pose for me to sculpt in clay. Somehow forgetting to draw in his battery tubes in his back. I just noticed. Jeez.
You think you understand?
I always feel it helps to make clay sculptures of these characters before creating the final 3D assets. Quick pencil sketches really can only get you so far. Hands-on 3D sculpting in clay 360 degrees is the way to go, and I highly recommend this step to anyone interested in creature design. I used this process while designing the Freaks for my Autodale series, and I also used this process while designing the Terrible Hound and Great Rat from my Merry Madness series. All of which I have made videos on, and surprise surprise, these are my 4 best monster designs to date. I sculpt all the time, not just for animation projects. Here's a humpback whale, and here's a stegosaurus. My house is full of these things, but the mayor might be one of my favourites. I love this guy. Love his design, love his pose, love his colours. There are subtle, pale, dark purples in his flesh, implying how old and rotten he has become. He is covered, head to toe, in black mechanical grease in areas you'd expect, his hands and his feet, but also leaking out of his goggles and his back where his flesh meets machine. I like his pose too, skulking, hunched with an extremely stretched gait, highlighting his unnatural digitigrade posture, and I'm particularly a fan of his core. From specific angles, you can really get a sense of how hollow this character's centre really is. A detail I feel you can only really appreciate in 3 dimensions. I've been showing you guys the finished, fully painted version of the mayor, but I actually only painted this sculpture about 2 weeks ago, after the film was already finished and uploaded. I sculpted him before the film, obviously, and he's been sat on my shelf for about 6 months like this, completely unfinished. I usually paint my sculptures before making the 3D models to be used in the final films, and I recommend that you do, but the pre-production of Immortal Machine was taking far longer than I was expecting, and I was growing quite impatient, and I felt I needed to start the film as soon as possible. 3D modelling and rigging the character was simple enough. I've done that type of work a 1,000 times. It was when I got to texturing where things got a bit tricky. This is one of the most finely detailed 3D character models I've ever made, and with my faux 2D style, that almost entirely comes down to the texture work, which I was basing off of a sculpture that wasn't painted yet. I ended up basing his texture work, his details and his tones, on the drawing I did of the sculpture more so than the sculpture itself. The final model I made and rigged I wasn't very happy with. I didn't like this model, I liked my sculpture. And after comparing the two of them quite extensively, I realised what was wrong. His proportions, like the character, was all off. His arms and legs were too long, his head, hands and feet were too small, his fleshy moustache wasn't long enough, and his ribcage just looked really bad. I then spent a day resizing, reshaping and repainting the 3D model to bring it more in line with my clay sculpture, and all of my issues totally started to fade away. I cannot overstate how important and useful making clay maquettes of these characters can be. The mayor was quite an interesting character to animate. He's hunched and unnaturally digitigrade. I wanted him to be quite heavy-footed and awkward because of this, almost falling into every step with a heavy, enormous cable sticking out the back of his spine at all times. But I also wanted him to have this seductive and dignified, almost gentlemanly side to him as well. Body language that would suggest that he doesn't quite know how monstrous his physical appearance has become.
Please, walk with me.
A detail that perhaps a lot of you may have missed while watching the film were the mayor's exposed lungs. They're mostly obscured by his ribcage throughout the film, but I made sure that they expanded and shrank every time he breathed in and out realistically and correctly with every word he speaks in the film.
You think you understand all the lies, all the needless atrocities? No.
The mayor is played by me. I play every single male character in the entire Autodale series. When I covered The Friendly Shadow, I mentioned how I wasn't totally happy voicing that character, worried that all the characters in the Autodale series were starting to sound the same. I looked for other voice actors, but decided to do it myself, ultimately somewhat dissatisfied with that decision. Yeah, I never looked for anyone else to play the mayor. This is the man who made Autodale. I was always going to play this guy.
It was all necessary.
His voice is sinister, it's overdubbed, it's unsettling, and it's very old. I really like the mayor's voice, and I don't really think it sounds like anybody else from the series. Maybe he sounds a little bit like a handyman, but that's makes kind of sense. I mean, he made those things. I was going for a very general British sound with a cheeky bit of Scottish every single time he really has to enunciate something important. I am a Scottish man, if you couldn't tell from my accent, so it only seemed appropriate to me that the character who created Autodale itself have a Scottish accent as well.
And those cheery voices, those pretty faces. There are no monsters here. The lies we spit.
I'm overall pretty happy with this character. I love his design, love his backstory, love his personality. But if you've seen the Immortal Machine making of, you'll know that I'm not overly satisfied with the film itself. The main thing that bothers me about the film is the mayor. I think he's a far more interesting and complex character than I managed to portray. In the film he's quite watered down, he's mostly an exposition machine, and we're not really shown why he is the way that he is. If I was to make another Autodale film based on a pre-existing character in the series, it wouldn't be the Exceptional Woman again, it wouldn't be the Friendly Shadow, it would absolutely be this guy. There is so much more to this character than I managed to show. In the film, we see a small glimpse of his relationship with the matriarch, which was left quite ambiguous for deliberate reasons, and I'll be covering that next week. But we also see a decent look at his relationship with the Exceptional Woman.
You've caused much disturbance in my kingdom above.
The Exceptional Woman is the first person that the mayor has talked to for thousands of years. He has been on his own, second-guessing and rotting away, a mind at odds with itself, full of regret and guilt and uncertainty for most of that time. But finally, someone shows up, someone who breaks the mold, a citizen, a victim of his crimes that he can ask forgiveness from.
Perhaps you, Autodale's exceptional girl, can forgive my necessary sins.
She is disgusted by him at first, but is slowly seduced, ultimately deciding to aid in the running of the town. In the film, it's a bit unclear whether or not the mayor is deliberately manipulating and indoctrinating her into conforming, or if he genuinely does want a second opinion as to whether or not his crimes were necessary, if Autodale should change. I kept it that way on purpose, and honestly, I don't think I even know. The mayor is split himself. Part of him thinks that Autodale is a utopia, his magnificent immortal machine, and half of him thinks the city is an abomination and wants to burn it all down. If the Exceptional Woman rejected Autodale in this moment here, and told the mayor that it should stop, I really have no idea what the mayor would say, and it's one of the things I really like about him.
That poor, lonesome thing seemed awfully burdened by his creation.
So, we see the mayor's relationship with the Exceptional Woman, and we see the mayor's relationship with the matriarch in the film, but what we don't see, and I think it's extremely important, is his relationship with the freaks. During the Withering, everything was dying. Not just people, plants and animals, gods and monsters, everything. The great Inventor justified all the atrocities he was forced to commit with unwavering certainty because he was under the impression he was saving the last of life in this world. But after achieving his goal, cheating the Withering and creating his Immortal Machine after a couple thousand years of Autodale spinning its wheels, complete success, to his horror, the world started to rebuild itself. Trees and plants started to appear again, and new creatures born from this twisted and bizarre unknowable new world started to show up as well. The world is being reborn, and it is totally leaving the mayor and humanity behind. Seeing the freaks living outside of Autodale, thriving in the withering world that should be poisonous, is exactly what started the mayor's doubts. This totally undercut his achievement. He didn't save the last of life. Life continued without him regardless, and has adapted. This moment broke him. It's the moment he went from 100% certain, of his actions, a stoic and powerful messiah, saviour of all, to a confused, second-guessing, tormented soul riddled with guilt. The mayor hates these things. He doesn't want them in his town. He doesn't want to know that they even exist. He has demonized them in Autodale's culture, all because they symbolize his regrets. They are proof that his actions, his sins, were in fact not necessary. If you want to support me or read any of the sketchbooks I've been showing off in this video, you can. Every animation sketchbook I've ever made is available on my Patreon page right now. This was a surprisingly fun video to make. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to go for another walk right now and get some outro B-roll. It's actually quite lovely outside. It's been snowing like crazy for the past couple of days. And you'll be seeing that, I guess, right now in 3, 2, 1. Special thanks to all my top Patreon supporters on screen right now. Probably superimposed over a river in the snow, or a duck, or maybe I got lucky and the local heron was out. Who knows? I doubt it though, I don't think they like the cold very much. Regardless, again, thank you all so much. Bye guys.